What's up, everybody? Welcome to Scofie Sessions. My name is Jonathan Schofield. My friends call me Scofie, some of them. And if you've stumbled on this piece of content today, either scrolling LinkedIn, YouTube, or perhaps you registered to attend with us now, what Scofie Sessions is my shameless excuse to hang out with my friends, peers, colleagues, industry professionals, people who I find fascinating, and hopefully we can all learn a little something today. Today's special guest is no exception, and I think he fits all of those descriptors that I provided. What did I say? Friend, peer, colleague, industry professional, et cetera, et cetera. If you were paying attention to my ChatGPT shenanigans earlier today, mage of revenue, I think I said. Anyways, Robert, we are so glad you're here. Don't talk yet. I'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself in more detail in just a second. But if you are here with us today we are going to be discussing something near and dear to both Robert and my heart. I'm speaking for you now. If you're an IT provider, and when I mean IT provider, you do managed IT services, cybersecurity, managed compliance, those types of things for small to medium-sized businesses or mid-level enterprises, et cetera, and you are the business owner or you are a revenue leader. If you are concerned with revenue growth, sales, business development, et cetera, in your MSP, if you will, this is for you. 2 steps forward, no steps back, ending revenue attrition in your MSP. What a mouthful we have. Before I hand it over to you, Robert, before we have some fun, if you are watching with us live today or the recording back later, say hi in the comments. Helps us out, and we want to cheer you on. And Blake is already here. Heir to the razor fortune. I'm not sure what that means, but we're glad you're here, Blake. Appreciate you, man. Let us know that you're watching with us. Robert, okay, I've said way too many words, and we're already 2 minutes into our time together, so I'm going to shut up. Tell everybody a little bit about Robert, what you wish they knew about you or wish they didn't know about you.
Oh, gosh. Man, after that introduction, I'm having a hard time getting my head back through the door. That was very kind of you. You're a good man. And I'm just grateful to be here. For those of you that don't know me, I sold MSP services. I sold for an MSP as their lead account executive for about 7 years here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Helped them grow from 10 to 30 million in revenue. Obviously wasn't responsible for all of that, but some of the biggest deals they've won, I believe I'm still hold that record. Someone said they'd text me when someone else breaks it. But now I started the MSP Dojo, which is a practice community, and that was acquired by the MSP Growth OS, another company I started with Dave Saygraves, who sold his MSP for 140 million. So now what we're really just helping MSPs do is transition from owner-led sales to sales engine. Just how do you get predictable, repeatable, organic, new client revenue without the owner having to do the whole thing? And that's just what we're focused on right now. So
fantastic. And that transition with MSP Dojo to MSP Growth OS, very recent. So congratulations on that, Robert, and the new
Thank
chapter.
you very much. Yeah, we started both kind of in tandem, and then it just made sense to put them together. So.
And I'm going to gush a little bit, fanboy over here, but though I've been delinquent and tardy these many months because of me running my own venture, but I was one of the first folks to drink the MSP Dojo Kool-Aid, and one of the few folks that wasn't an MSP that was allowed graciously to participate in MSP Dojo. So, and I know we've got actually a couple MSP Dojo members, at least one, watching with us today, so we're glad that you're here. But I drank the Kool-Aid in the sense that totally believe in it. And if you don't want what that is, basically, practice in a community of people and not on your prospects, sales specifically. So anyways, so very exciting to have you here, Robert. Always.
Thanks, man. Anytime I'm in a room with you, I'm a happy man.
So as we jump into the content for today, the way that I want to frame it is 3 things. And then we can, within those 3 things, we can jump on soapboxes, or sandboxes, any boxes.
Sure.
Go down rabbit trails and have fun. Now, if you are watching today and you want to poll the audience or chump the stump, I'm struggling with words today, But if you would like Robert's or probably Robert's insight on anything, speak up in the chat. Say hello. The three things: status quo, future state, and in between status quo and future state, the conduit by which we transcend from status quo to future state. So let's start by laying out the status quo that you yourself have seen in the IT services industry. So having worked in an MSP yourself, who's experienced growth attrition, and as a person who daily interfaces with IT service providers, both the CEOs, owners, and their sales professionals, let's articulate the status quo when it comes to what we would call revenue attrition for MSPs. Share with us your perspective on what you see happening in the market right now.
Yeah. So this is a tough one. Whenever I hear someone explain to me that they have, I said, what's your attrition like? And they say, oh, almost none. They often wear it as a badge of honor. And to me, I see it like an interest-only mortgage. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's not necessarily bad used the right way, but the bill comes due. And we see this, and this isn't just data I've been anecdotally gathering. If you look at Service Leader Index or ConnectWise, they all have this data that says MSPs in general, when aggregated or aggregated or over an amount of time, like a 5 to 8 year horizon, 5 to 16% attrition. And it either happens every year like clockwork, or it happens all at once when your largest client leaves. But it's not tied to performance. I mean, if you have really bad performance, then your attrition is going to be way higher. But
Right.
Even the best MSPs in the world are 5 to 16% every year, because every business, like there's not every business in the world is a good business. Like a lot of businesses go out of business. Businesses get acquired. They shrink, they grow. Like there's movement in our client base. And we have this kind of like chunky thing with MSPs where you're like, I got a client and now my revenue went like this. And then I get another one, it goes like this. And then I lose one, it goes like that. And we have these big chunky moves in our revenue. And we can't really do that same scaling as employees, like perfectly. We can't just ramp up our service delivery to match up and down. Right. And so we have these lines that are moving in chunky ways up and down. And then we settle into this great rhythm. We're like, we're profitable now. Right. And like everything's steady. And MSPs tend to operate as if that's the way it will be forever. And then they don't prepare for those changes in revenue. And then something happens and they lose that client that's 30% of their revenue. And now they're in real trouble. And I keep hearing that story over and over and over again. And that's how I think about attrition. Most people think is like, I blew it with a client, now we lost him. And that's not really the biggest concern for most MSPs. For most MSPs, we're good. Things are great. And so I'm not going to do the things necessary to protect my growth over time. We're going to focus on service delivery instead. And then they focus on that for a while. And then a big thing happens. And suddenly they have to come up with 30% of their revenue. And you can't just do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just said a bunch of stuff. Now's your turn.
No, I love it. So I told you right before we hopped on here that I just got back yesterday from the beach with my daughters. So this is fresh in my mind. When I think of revenue attrition, I think of me and my daughters hunting for seashells deep in the sand at the beach. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can just walk the beach and look for them lying out on the sand, or you can do what we did. And we like to actually excavate and dig deep and see if we can find any treasures deep in the sand. Now, digging a hole in the sand, the first couple of shovelfuls, they're not an issue. You are going deeper into the beach, and
it's going great.
It's going great. But you notice the deeper that you get, eventually you hit this critical mass where you stop going down. You stop going down into the beach. And what happens when you take a scoop out? The walls of the hole slide in and fill the bottom. And for every shovelful you take out, another shovelful or two shovelfuls slide back into the water deeper in your hole. And Uh, and
Great
and I think
analogy. It's
I
fantastic.
well, I think you see this trajectory with IT providers all the time, where I had a job in corporate IT, or I worked for another MSP and I thought I could do it better, or I was just really good with computers and I had this opportunity to take on a client and do support for them. And those first 2, 3, 4 years of growth are very organic, and the referrals come to you, and that badge of courage you say, like, I see that with less mature, earlier stage MSPs really often, where they're like, oh yeah, all of my clients come to me through word of mouth and because of our really great service, and we're very proud of that. But if you hear an MSP who's been doing it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years say anything about word of mouth, it's like, I wish it wasn't that way anymore, because we've hit that critical mass where, yeah, we still get the majority of our clients through word of mouth, but we've hit this kind of plateau where the volume of those referrals are less, and the rate at which we lose a client versus the rate at which we bring on a client, which is why we kind of decided to call this 2 steps forward, no steps back, because the reality is a lot of you are finding that to be your experience. You win maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 clients a year, and you lose 1, 2, maybe a big one, maybe 3, et cetera, et cetera. And so you find yourself in this revenue bind, and you feel like you can't punch through it. You said something earlier, Robert, and I want you to spend some time talking about it. You said something about preparing for revenue change. You said something to that effect. All right. So step 1, how do we prepare for that revenue change? What's the first thing?
Yeah. So it's going to depend a lot on the MSP, and I'm going to talk about that, at different sizes and all that if we get to it. But like before, I want to just like blanket everything I'm going to say for the rest of this time here with a big like asterisk for anyone that's listening. Like, I'm one of those guys that like wants to point out you don't necessarily have to be what other people want you to be. Like, so many MSPs are like, man, I'm at 3 million and I wish I could get to 5, or I'm at 5, I wish I could get to 10. And one of the things I'm first asking people is like, are you really prepared to do what is necessary? Like, at 6 or 7 or 8 million, you'll probably earn less money than you did it for. And like, is that really what you want? Do you really want to go through that just so you could have a big badge that says like, I'm at 10 million? Is that what you really want? Because if you don't really want it, maybe it's not a good idea to go on that journey, and stop letting people tell you that you should. Like, so if you're at 2 million and you like, there's a guy in the dojo, I won't drop his name. He's at like 2.5 million. He lives an amazing life. He's totally happy. He has no desire to grow beyond that. And I like, dude, it's so awesome that you are who you like, you know who you want to be when you grow up. And like, that's okay. So, but what I would say to that person is like, whether you're there or you're like, man, I'm going to get to 50 or die. Like, it's really up to you. But either way, whether you're at the 2 and want to stay at 2, or you're 2 going to 50, you have to do something. And I just did a post about this called, what's more important? Is it progress, or is it process? Is it results, or is it process? And I'm a huge believer in like, if you can get results without a good process, you got lucky. And yeah, we get lucky from time to time, and it's good to be lucky. But if you want to be consistent, you have to have a good process. Right. So my question is, hey, if you're 2 and you want to stay at 2, what is your process for making sure that when that big client leaves, you can replace them almost immediately? Just what is that process? If your process is if you want to go from 2 to 50, what is your process to do that? When you start scooping out I love that analogy of the sand, because so many MSPs, they go, man, I'm making such great progress. And then they hit that moment where the walls start to collapse. And what they don't realize is you need a different set of tools to go any deeper.
Right. That's right.
And instead they go, well, we'll just do more. And like, well, okay, that might get you a little deeper, but at some point you have to rethink the strategy. And so when we're talking about this 2 steps forward, no steps back, which, God, if you can do that, that's amazing. Even 2 steps forward and 1 back is a pretty good effort.
That's right.
A lot of the time it's looking at the process. Like, hey, what got you from where you were to where you are now? When it stops working, stop trying it. Like, do something different.
That's right.
And if you can, go ask the people that have done it. I think all the time everyone wants to be a trailblazer. Everyone wants to discover the new best way. And like, there's certainly a value in that. But there's this great book called Stealing Fire, which admittedly I read the summary of. But it talks about like we feel like the guy who invented fire is the one we want to be, when in reality it's so much cheaper, faster, easier to just get the fire from the first guy. And it's the
That's right.
same fire, it does the same thing, man. And so like, are you willing to humble yourself a little bit and go like, hey, who's got this answer that I can just go reuse instead of carving my own brand new path through the world? Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense. Absolutely. I hear this. You'll resonate with this, Robert, because I know you talk to at least as many MSPs as I do, but I hear this all the time. Like when I'm on a discovery call with a business owner and they're sharing with me the challenges they've been facing related to revenue, they start to give a lot of the reasons why their experience has been unique, why it's a particularly challenging reality for them, whether it's their geolocation or their market or who they're going after, or just their horrible experiences with hiring or their experiences with outsourcing. And they're giving me all of these reasons why they are in this situation where they're digging in that same hole and having the same challenge. When the reality is, if they looked up from the hole they're digging around them on the beach, they're going to see an army of other people digging holes on the beach just like them. But another thing that they'll notice is that some of them are going to be just like you, and they're having the same challenges exactly the same way. But then you'll notice that there's other people who are way deeper, and they've got an excavator next to their hole. And they're like, when their head pops up from their hole, all you can see is their eyeballs. And like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? Right. And to your point, like the challenges related to revenue attrition are often less unique than you might think. And the solutions and the tools don't need to be reinvented. It's been done. Yeah. You can look around you. And I'm so glad earlier you called out the existential piece. Like, what is it you want? Because earlier I said, let's frame it from the status quo and then articulate the future state. So the status quo, I think you and I have both spent some time here, and we've kind of identified those key indicators of where you're at on the beach and the progress you've made and where you're at in your journey. But unless you know where it is, what that future state's supposed to look like for you, how can you possibly begin to put a process in place to get you from here to there? You don't know where you're going and what you want. And I love that story you shared of the gentleman who's at $2 million in revenue, living a great life, and he's completely content with that. And if that's you, excellent. I would say you still need a plan for revenue attrition.
Absolutely.
Because things happen, right? And if you want to sustain that lifestyle, sustain your venture where it is, that requires a process and a plan.
Absolutely.
Don't want to bank on luck. But I would venture a guess that if you're watching this today, if you joined a live cast called Ending Revenue Attrition in Your MSP, there's two things that probably drew you here. Either you're tired of losing customers and having difficulty refilling the hole, or I should say replacing them, or you've got a future state in mind and you've been on a trajectory towards it, but you're hitting this invisible barrier and you're like, damn it, why can't I just, every step forward seems to cost you so much. I would venture a guess that the majority of people who are engaging with this video with you and me today, Robert, are probably experiencing one of those two realities. Man, yeah. I wish I would stop losing clients and it's so hard to replace them. Or I wish I could make more progress on that towards that future state. Okay, so now let's get nitty gritty here. So planning for the black hole, from uncertainty to predictable revenue, taking back control of your revenue. And if I read between the lines of what you shared earlier, when we talk about planning for the black hole, you said process, different tools. When you're at certain stages, your different tools are required. All right. Yeah. So let's get really tactical, really practical here. And I'm going to remind everybody watching right now, you've got the experts online, or at least one of them, and me as well. Throw something at us. Okay. Is this resonating with you? Do you want to share an example of how you were in that spot and you got out of it? Or, you want to bare your sleeves and tell us what you're struggling with. Don't be shy. Really practical, Robert. What's the first thing somebody who's in one of those two camps needs to do Let's assume that they've done the self-existential piece where they're like, all right, I want to exit. I want to grow to 15 million in revenue, and I want to exit. Right?
Yeah.
I would say that's a fairly common thing I hear from people. I want to grow to a certain level and I want to hand the keys over to someone else.
Yeah.
Let's say that's that future state they aspire to. Let's say that they're that 2 million in revenue guy. Let's say they're at 2 million and he's not satisfied and he wants to go to that 15 exit. What's the first thing he needs to do?
Yeah. So screaming into the void, not knowing who I'm talking to. Here's some generalizations if you're looking for like a hand-drawn map of the new world. Somewhere between 2 and 5 million, the MSP starts to peter in sales like this because the owner can only spend so much time in front of people convincing them to give you money. There's only so many client referrals you can get organically or accidentally is what I call when people say organic. My clients just refer me. Cool. You can't pull on that lever and double it. So like the first thing is somewhere around 2 to 5 million, you have to develop some kind of a process for a machine. Like it runs at 1,000 RPM and I'm happy. But if something happens, I can pull on this lever and kick it up to 3,000 RPM and I'll get more output. Like you have to have a process for something before like that 2 to 5 million. So that you know when to, like, you know what levers to pull to get the output you need to replace that client that leaves or says, hey, we're going to hire internally in the next 6 months. And you go like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose $1 million in revenue. How am I going to replace that? You can go to your machine and go, let's crank this up to 11. And I know 3 to 6 months from now, I'll have the revenue to cover that client that's going. That's the first thing you got to do at like the 2 to 5 range. Then at like the first real black hole is 6 to 8. Because somewhere around 6 to 8 million, there's just the owner just can't pull. Like you hit the end of those levers, the dials are at 11, and just the amount of revenue that churns at even 5% at 5 million is a lot more than 5% at 2 million. And so what happens is that churn eventually that you cannot avoid, that will never go away, starts to nip at the heels of the activity the owner can do, regardless of the machine they have available to them. And so it just starts to nip at the heels no matter what you pour into that bucket or no matter how big the scoop is you take out of the sand. The sides are going to cave in because you just can't outrun it. And so also at that, like as an MSP, like functionally, somewhere between 5 and 10 million, you have to start implementing things like middle management and more structure in the business, because you can't just go to lunch and decide on a new product. Like you got to have meetings and like, SOPs, and like, it's just the business gets more complex, which is expensive. And so you've got this idea where around 6 to 8 million, you're just going to start pouring money into your MSP. Your EBITDA is just going to drop. Like the net out of the business cash is just going to start to disappear. And you have to have a way of pushing through over or around that black hole to a more profitable, like 8 to 10 million again. And what happens is a lot of MSPs try and buy their way out of it. They go like, yeah, I'm at 5 million. I've got this great cash bottom line. I'm going to leverage and I'm going to buy to 10. I'm going to scoop up 2 or 3 MSPs. All my problems will be solved. But then attrition pulls you back towards that black hole. Because again, if you can't replace that 5 to 16% or whatever the number is, it's just going to pull you closer to that. And it's going to happen so much faster at 10 than at 5, because percentages are always going to be percentages. And so you have to have a process in place. Like, how am I going to go over this? Not like at a headline level, like what are the actions I or someone here is going to take every day to make sure 6 months from now, I've got revenue to replace that attrition. And that's what I mean process. Like you have to know when you wake up in the morning, what are the things I have to do every day? And I have a strong level of belief that if I do those every day without fail, the revenue will be on the other side 6 months from now.
That's right. Now, so you've articulated kind of 3 different like levels for the black hole. First in that 2 to 5. And if you're in the 2 to 5 bracket, priority number 1 is building the machine, understanding which levers you need to pull in order to have revenue coming in and to grow and to plan for the attrition that's inevitable. 6 to 8, you said that there's new tools required, and then you said one of the approaches some of the IT providers have, which I've seen a lot, is like, how do I get to 10? I go buy to 10, and that is like that's like just using a bigger shovel than the one you have to get deeper faster, but it's not going to prevent the walls of your sand hole from sliding
To clarify, it provides immediate results,
in.
but it is not sustainable. Like, immediately, like, boom, we're at 10. Woohoo, that's great. But like, it's not solving the root cause of the problem.
So what's the difference that I need as the IT provider? Let's say I've punched through, I built my machine, I'm at 6 to 8, and now I'm experiencing those percentages as you described them. What do I do different? What do I do different now that I wasn't doing in 2 to 5?
I mean, there's just one of them is just like people, like resources, and like I would love it. I would love it. I would just be so happy if I could find a company out there that I could hire that would just get me FTAs. And this is like, and I don't want to dog on any vendors here, because I think that in general, marketing, outsourced placement of like FTAs, like cold calling companies, these can play a part of your sales revenue engine. But like the challenge is most MSPs just don't want to do it. At 2 or 5 or 10, they just don't like sales. They don't want to be in sales. Their dream is to get it completely off of their plate. And like, I'm working with MSPs in the MSP Growth OS all the way from 1 million up to $100 million in revenue. And I don't think I know of a single one where there isn't leadership involved in sales in perpetuity. It's just, you're gonna have to be good at this at some level, no matter what vendors or internal people you hire. And so that's one of the things that's like a big indicator, is like, who here that has leadership and executive function at this business is going to pay attention to it. And I call it the difference between like investing in sales and abdicating sales. Like a lot of people go like, well, I'm going to invest in sales. I'm like, that's great. What does that look like? That's right. Most people are really, they're saying like, well, I'm going to abdicate sales. I'm going to hire a company or a person or a vendor, and I'm going to go, cool, grow my business. And when it doesn't work, I'm going to yell at you and fire you and blame you.
That's right.
And that just, I haven't seen that work very well.
Right.
So investing in sales is different though. Like, I'm going to be a big part of this. I'm going to lead it. I'm going to own it, but I'm going to use tools and other people to help me do it.
So we're running up on time, and there's a few more things I want to do before we're done. I know. Too much fun. But before we hop off of this and kind of transition a little bit, I want to sit here for just a second longer to reaffirm what you just said. So first of all, your answer to the question, what do I do different at 6 to 8 versus 2 to 5, was people and resources. So if I've built the machine, at 6 to 8, I'm ready for that machine. I put all of the gears in place so that I can put more people into this machine and scale it now. Now, what I've seen a lot of people do is they think people are the machine, and either hiring, what they're thinking they're doing is they're hiring the machine, or they're throwing the hot potato of sales at an outsourced provider who has people, and they're trying to circumvent the necessity for the machine. It's like getting a jockey who's going to run in tennis shoes the Kentucky Derby. You did not put a horse between his legs. Do not be surprised. He's not going to win, right? I see this happen all the time. A jockey without a horse will not win the Kentucky Derby. And so what you're saying is go get the horse at 2 to 5. Figure out the winning horse. I'm mixing metaphors here because you said build the machine.
Keep going, man.
Like, I'm trying to think, how do I build a horse? You know what I'm saying? Go get a horse. And then you need people that can ride them. Okay?
Yeah.
But before you can do any of that, you need to grow an appetite for this distasteful thing, this thing that you think is distasteful. Now, if you're watching this today, either you already know that. This is kind of like telling someone who's trying to get in shape that they need to eat healthy and they need to regularly exercise, and like, ugh. But yeah, okay, yes. But that's the thing. Those are the behaviors that you need to start emulating. And before your people are going to follow you, you have to be emulating that and demonstrating that yourself. So it goes back to that existential piece, I think, about where it is you see yourself going. And is it a fantasy or is it a goal? like a fantasy versus a goal. Like everybody dreams of exiting at 15 or 30 or whatever. Everybody has that fantasy of selling their IT business, but is it actually an attainable goal? If you have not drank that Kool-Aid yourself and you've not fully bought into your own vision, how could you possibly expect any of those people of the 6 to 8 tier to be like, all right, I'm going to follow this guy into the teeth of hell because I know he's in it and I can follow a leader who's in it, but I can't follow a leader who's just chucking the hot potato of sales at me and perpetually shocked and blaming those people. And I'm going to go back to my other mixed metaphor. He hired me to win the Kentucky Derby and gave me no horse.
Yeah. I hear you, man. And it's like, I think it's important to recognize that like there's even 3 levels here, because I just saw someone post a question in the chat. So I'm going to address that. Like there's realistically 3 people that need to be involved in this kind of a thing from what Jaime is saying. Is like, you've got the boots on the ground people that are going to generate first time appointments, whether that's someone you hire internally or a service you use, but like someone has to come up with the opportunities.
That's right.
Then we have to work those opportunities.
That's right.
And then, and that is an intense qualifying and figuring out, like every bad business that's about to fail has IT problems, and all of them will take a meeting with you, but very few of them should you actually serve. And so like figuring out how to sort through and qualify and really get people to opt out that are bad and telling people no that are bad and getting to that cream of the crop. And then when you get to that cream of the crop, there's what we call the executive component. Like there's the sales component. Someone has to run the good process.
That's right.
But then someone has to be the executive that looks the other executive in the eyes and says, you can trust us. And they go, okay. And there's that executive component is one of the reasons why leaders and owners of MSPs tend to stay involved throughout. They just start working bigger and bigger deals. Like I'm working with a guy who his MSP is about 40, 50 million right now. And when he was at 20 million, he was involved in every deal. And then they hired a sales leader and the team's been growing. And now they only bring in the owner for those deals that are, like 15K and above. But they find that those 15K and above deals close more consistently with the owner involved. That's the executive level of the team, not the client. And so as you're sitting here and you're figuring out, part of learning and building a great machine is understanding its output. And so like, if you have a killer, if you have a guy who can stand toe to toe with the CEO of a $10 million law firm and they feel like they are a peer, the client feels like they're a peer with your sales leader, then you're not going to have problems. But if that isn't how the client feels, like you have to figure out how to get that executive presence in the room.
So I agree with you 100%. And Jaime, I'm so glad that you chimed in with your comment here. First of all, I want to be very direct to you in your question because I empathize greatly. What I'm hearing is that executive leadership is, and I don't know the situation, so I'm not going to make any presumptions here. But what I'm reading between the lines is that you are feeling the responsibility of the revenue growth squarely on your shoulders. The MSP owner, in your words, wants to be more hands-off on the sales side of things. I've seen that a million times. That's very common that you would find yourself in this situation without knowing whether or not, Jaime, you're a partner in the business or you have any stake in any of this. If you're just like, and I don't say just, you are the guy leading the sales department, okay? My advice to you is if you're not the owner, then you need to adopt an ownership mentality. And what that means is when I was first hired as an SDR in the software world, years ago, I was given 2 days of training, 1 day on the product, 1 day on how to, not sound like an idiot on the phone. I was chucked down in front of a CRM I'd never used before. And I was told, go find 2 leads a day. And that was the extent of my training. And I had a choice in that moment to either be responsible for my own destiny and take ownership of my role in the organization, or just take what was given to me as it was given to me and hope for the best. I chose the former. Like I saw if I was going to be successful, I needed to put on my big boy pants and do the work. And regardless of what tools or resources I was given, I was going to find a way. So I adopted an ownership mentality that led me to where I am today. And that was a choice I specifically made many years ago. I was not an owner in the business, but I am an owner of a business now.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have been if I would.
Yeah. And I want to jump in real quick. Like, Jaime, ownership, actual equity share ownership isn't actually important. That's not really what matters. And I'm not just talking to you, Jaime, I'm talking to broader, because this is the thing that almost every MSP that's struggling to grow that I know of, or I personally interact with, struggles with. They go, I just want someone else to do it. And it's very, very hard for those people to be successful. That's abdication. And I'm not saying it's hard for Jaime, the sales leader, to be. It's hard for that owner to be successful, because there just aren't. I just don't know of any MSP where the owner goes, I just don't care about this. It's not important to me. I'm going to hire other people and they're either going to succeed or fail. I just don't know any MSPs that really consistently, organically, repeatably grow with that mindset. Now, Jaime, you can still, regardless of what the guy who actually owns shares does, the executive level presence is what's important. We in the Growth OS, we talk about 3 kind of like circles in the Venn diagram. There's the executive, the technical, and the sales. So the sales, someone's job has to be to run the job, like the sale from start to finish. Someone's got to carry the ball, check the boxes. There's a technical component. Can we actually do the thing they need us to do? And then there's that executive component. Can I build enough trust between our MSP and those clients that they will give us the responsibility?
That's right.
And like that executive level, maybe, Jaime, maybe you can do that. And that's with the client side. But then the flip side of that is the MSP going to make that hard or easy for you? Because there's this whole tension between that. Like I mentioned, clients and resources, that chunky growth. A sales department that's like is just churning out revenue can have their legs cut out from them by an unengaged ownership that says like, hey, stop selling because you're crushing our service delivery. Well, that can create a whole bunch of problems. So realistically, having the owner involved in sales in some way isn't just about closing revenue. It's about keeping the engine in good shape, keeping the engine productive, knowing, are my levers set correctly? Because the decisions the sales team makes today greatly affect the business 3 to 6 months from now, whether we're closing or not. Like what the sales team does today is going to dictate how the business runs in 3 to 6 months. And if there's a disconnect, that's really hard for the sales team to be successful.
I would say, I'd piggyback on that and say it is absolutely the owner's responsibility to facilitate a culture of growth in their organization so that folks like you, Jaime, regardless of whether they're on discovery calls and closing deals or not, you feel empowered. You've been given enough rope to hang yourself with, and you know what to do. You've been given license and resource to go forth and conquer. And that culture must be facilitated from leadership down. If it's not, and I don't know your situation, so if it's not, you probably are. It's probably within your. You should talk to him. You should talk to him or her, the owner, and sit down and say, hey, I don't know that we have a culture of growth around here. And I feel like we could use your buy-in to help facilitate that culture of growth. And you're going to have to be specific. In which ways do you feel like you're handcuffed? In which ways do you feel like you are enabled and empowered? If apart from that culture of growth being facilitated by leadership down, I feel like you in your role and any other sales leaders that are in a similar situation watching this or watching the recording back later are going to always feel conflict between leadership and your roles and responsibilities. You're going to be expected to bring home the kill to feed the tribe, but no one gave you spears.
Yeah.
And
I want to be really, I want to just be like, I'm going to jump in here. Like, this is tough. This is really tough because most MSPs that are in a position to hire sales team, like anyone in sales, they tend to be in the top of their peer groups. They tend to be like, if they can afford to really invest in a sales team, they probably are one of the more successful MSPs they know. And it can be really hard to tell them they're wrong or that they need to grow. or they need to put on their white belt and learn all over again. That can be really hard. And that's why I go back to like there's theoretical sales, like theoretical revenue engine growth that has the right answers. And it's not that the answers are wrong. It's just sometimes it's hard for people to accept them because there's so much on the line.
That's right.
You know, and that's one of the reasons why I brought the dojo into the Growth OS is that I've got coaches on our team that have sold their MSP for $60 million, $140 million of revenue. Like that's what their revenue was when they sold.
Right.
I've got coaches that have led teams of 30 or 40 people that can speak into the current situations at the executive level and say, hey, owner, this is how what you're doing is going to cause your team that you've hired to fail. Right. And that's a really hard thing to do because they just don't want to hear it from a guy who, yeah, I helped an MSP grow to 30 million, but I've never owned an MSP. And so it can be really hard for them to take that advice because there's so much on the line. And I understand that. You got to get in the room with someone who just knows better than you and learn something.
So we're going to be wrapping up here. So I want to quickly summarize. So the answer, 2 steps forward, no steps back, ending revenue attrition in your MSP per Robert Gillette and Scofie here. 2 to 5 million, if you need to be focused, laser focused on building the machine, establishing the process, determining which levers you need to be pulling in order to prepare for attrition and to be able to navigate through it and then punch through that ceiling on the other side and continue to scale and grow. At 6 to 8, you need to be investing, assuming you've got the machine built, you need to be investing in people and resources so that you can surround yourself with the folks that are going to help you win. And then none of that happens. None of that happens without executive leadership facilitating a culture of growth and the operators within the business adopting an ownership mentality towards their success within the organization and everybody swimming in the same direction. That is kind of my patchwork quilt of a summary of what we've discussed today, Robert. What would you clarify or adjust to that before we kind of give you the opportunity to talk Growth OS really quick?
Yeah. Just know who you want to be and be humble enough to ask when you don't know how to do it. Like that is the number one reason as we're meeting with MSPs and they're saying, hey, I want your growth. I want your growth. I want your growth. And then we say like, well, you need to do this. And they go, yeah, we do that. And I go, okay. But if you really did, we wouldn't be talking. And that's from the sales professional who makes cold calls all the way up to the guy that leads a team of 5 sales managers and 30 performers. If you ask the person who's done what you want to do what to do and they tell you and you go, yeah, but we do that, you may not actually do that. And sure. Just having the humility to sit and answer and live in that tension is one of the number one indicators of whether or not you're going to fix this problem.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Robert. And we're going to wrap up here real fast. MSP Growth OS, and you sort of have been doing it the last, couple of statements, but give like the 2-sentence elevator pitch, best way for them to get a hold of you. And then I'll kind of lead us out.
Yeah. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. If I think it's a fit, I'm happy to pitch you in a one-on-one for an hour with a guy that did the thing you're looking to do. And they'll just consult with you for free for an hour. And 1 out of 5 might pay us money. That's really our go-to-market strategy. So if you're interested in sitting in a room for an hour with a guy that sold his MSP for more money than you can imagine, hit me up. We'll get you connected.
Love that. Fantastic. And I am Scofie, the founder of FindMyITPartner.com. I want to help you find your next client. And I can also help in terms of business development, sales management, and a host of other ways. So reach out to Robert, reach out to me. You can hit us both up on LinkedIn. And we're going to go to the outro here on the title card at the very end. There's going to be a few other places that you can follow us. If you consume this type of content on YouTube or TikTok or wherever else, feel free to scan the QR code for our link tree and follow us wherever else would be relevant. It all helps. And again, thank you all for being here. Robert, you are a tremendous guest as always, and we'll catch you all next time.
Love you, buddy. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Toodles, y'all.